This lesson will show how to determine the annual rate of return needed to recover from an investment loss, as well as the annual rate of return needed to get back on track for a financial goal. In this lesson, the recovery time is 2 years. I do have another lesson that shows a recovery time of 1 year. To begin, assume you need to earn an 8% return compounded annually on your investment to stay on track for your financial goal. The stocks you invested in post a loss of 15% for the first year. Number one, how much would you need to earn the next 2 years to make up for the loss? And number two, to stay on track and earn an average of 8% each year, what rate of return would you need the next 2 years? To answer these questions, we'll be using the compound interest formula when the interest is compounded annually, given by the formula A equals P times the quantity 1 plus R raised to the power of T, where A is the amount after time T is the time in years, P is the principal or starting amount, and R is the annual rate of return. To begin, we need to assume a principal or starting amount. The amount is not going to affect the result. I'm going to go ahead and assume the principal P is equal to $100. To begin, we need to determine the account balance after a loss of 15% in the first year, which is A sub loss equals 100 times the quantity 1 minus 0.15, which results in $85. Next, we need an expression for the account balance for the next 2 years. Using the compound interest formula, we have A sub 2, the amount in the next 2 years is equal to $85, the starting amount after the loss, and then times 1 plus R sub BE raised to the second power, where R sub BE is the rate to restore the loss or break even, and we have an exponent of 2 because the time is 2 years. And now to answer the question, how much you would need to earn the next 2 years to make up for the loss, we set 85 times the square of the quantity 1 plus R sub BE equal to the initial investment of $100, and then solve for R sub BE. This gives us the equation 85 times the square of 1 plus R sub BE equals 100. And now we need to solve the equation for R sub BE. The first step is to divide both sides by 85. Notice on the left, 85 divided by 85 simplifies to 1, which gives us a square of 1 plus R sub BE equals 100 divided by 85. And now we need to undo the squaring by taking the square root of both sides of the equation. The square root undoes the squaring, resulting in the equation 1 plus R sub BE equals the square root of 100 divided by 85. And then finally we subtract 1 on both sides of the equation. And now we go to the calculator to determine the annual rate of return needed over the next 2 years to restore the loss and restore the account balance back to the initial investment of $100. We enter the square root, 100 divided by 85, right arrow, minus 1. Notice the minus 1 is not under the square root. To 4 decimal places, R sub BE is 0.0847, which gives us 8.47%. You must earn 8.47% the next 2 years in order to restore the account balance back to the initial investment of $100. And let's go ahead and check this. To check this, we enter 0.0847 for R sub BE in the equation shown here. This shows if you earn 8.47% the next 2 years, it will restore the account balance back to almost exactly $100. There's a slight error here because we did round the 8.47%. In general, we can use the formula shown here in the bottom right-hand corner to determine the rate to restore a loss, or break even, where T is the number of makeup years. R sub BE, the rate to restore a loss or break even, is equal to the teeth root of the quotient of 1 and the difference of 1 and the rate of loss minus 1. We'll look at some more examples of this formula in the next video. I also want to mention this does put you 3 years behind your financial goal because you had 1 year of loss and 2 years to make up for the loss, which brings us to question number 2. To stay on track and earn an average of 8% each year, what rate of return would you need the next 2 years? Well, we already know the account balance after the loss is $85, and now we need to determine what the account balance should be after 3 years if you did earn 8% interest compounded annually for the first 3 years. This would be equal to A sub 3, which is equal to 100, the initial principal, times the quantity 1 plus 0.08, or just 1.08, raised to the power of t, where in this case t is equal to 3 years. Again, 3 years here because 1 year of loss and 2 years to get back on track. So this represents what the account balance should be after the first 3 years. And now we need to determine what rate of return must be earned on $85 over 2 years to result in an account balance of 100 times the cube of 1.08. This gives us the equation 100 times 0.85, which is $85, times the square of 1 plus r subtract, where r subtract is the rate of return needed over the 2 years to get an account balance of 100 times the cube of 1.08. I'm purposely leaving the amounts as products because when solving the equation, it simplifies nicely in this form. And now we need to solve for r subtract. The first step is to divide both sides by the product of 100 and 0.85. On the left, 100 times 0.85 divided by itself simplifies to 1. And on the right, notice 100 divided by 100 simplifies to 1. This gives us the equation the square of 1 plus r subtract equals the cube of 1.08 divided by 0.85. And now we need to undo the squaring on the left by taking the square root of both sides of the equation. The square root undoes the squaring, giving us 1 plus r subtract equals the square root of the quotient of the cube of 1.08 and 0.85. And then finally we subtract 1 on both sides of the equation. And now we go back to the calculator. We enter the square root, and then we have 1.08 cubed, right arrow, divided by 0.85, right arrow, minus 1. To 4 decimal places, we have 0.2174, which means r subtract, the rate to get back on track, is approximately 0.2174, or 21.74%, which means you would need to earn 21.74% interest each year for the next 2 years in order to get back on track for your financial goal of earning 8% interest compounded annually. And again, let's go ahead and check this. To check this, we need to make sure that the equation shown here at the bottom is true, meaning if you earn 21.74% on $85 for 2 years, it's going to be equal to earning 8% on $100 over 3 years. And we can see the left side and right side does result in almost exactly the same account balance. Again, there's a slight error here because the 21.74% is rounded. In general, to determine the rate to get back on track for a financial goal after a loss, or to determine r subtract, where t is number of makeup years, r subtract is equal to the tth root of the quotient of 1 plus r sub goal raised to the power of t plus 1 and 1 minus r sub loss minus 1, where in our case, r sub goal is the 8% or 0.08, and r sub loss is equal to 15% or 0.15. We'll look at some more examples of this formula in the next lesson. I hope you found this helpful.